Okay. User experience is a very powerful tool. Imagine an app or an operating system as the bedroom of someone you don't know with a bunch of random crap on the floor. That random crap is the master list of functions that app, website, or system may have. The user experience designer's job is to pick up every item on that list, or every object on the floor, and place it in a drawer, cupboard, or closet that seems most logical to the owner, so that when they come back, they can guess where their dark pair of jeans are and just find it. It's the job of a designer to create conveniences that make software seem more personal and tailored to the user.
One thing is clear, you can't have UX without understanding humans and how they operate. Nintendo understood humans and how they experience interactive software, and to an extent they still try to. And even though their record in the UX department is a bit different this decade, or at least viewed that way, they still have an innovator's heart, at least on the hardware end of things.
Here are two innovations that Nintendo approached well with the Starfox franchise. It all started here. This is 1992. This is the first portable 3D title, probably the only one for the Game Boy. It was called X, or Lunar Chase, depending on where you're from. Nintendo Japan could thank this man for this, as he, Dylan Cuthbert, was the chief engineer and designer for the project alongside Sakamoto-san, the designer behind the Metroid series at the time. From a consumer's perspective, the Starfox series would at least begin as a marriage of Dylan's engineering direction and Shigeru Miyamoto's creative direction, but there's more to it than simply that. Let's dive in. The origins of three-dimensional polygonal titles began with wireframe graphics in games like Star Wars. However, despite the fact that arcade cabinets could support the models, none of them were financially successful. The first of the more commercial bunch was iRobot in 1983. This, alongside a slew of flight simulators, were mostly exploratory, free-roaming playgrounds, essentially tech demos. In the same year as X, we saw titles take ambitious, yet admittedly undercutting strides towards the third dimension, such as Mario Kart. With the use of texture mapping, we saw a roughly conjured hybrid of 2D and 3D graphics that Nintendo would fully realize in Starfox, among other titles, in due time.
Despite the credit that's attributed to him in various blogs and videos, however, Dylan Cuthbert had no role in developing the hardware to run Starfox.
His boss, Jez-san, worried about that. Dylan co-programmed in a team of 3 with Giles Goddard and Krister Womble. A number of 3D assets were supplied by the two 3D hardware designers on the project. As far as the documented relationship is concerned, Dylan brought his familiarity and interest in spaceship simulators to Miyamoto. At the time, it was very easy to be inspired by that theme, considering Namco's STARBLADE cabinets were a popular testament at the time. When asked about his experience with Miyamoto, Dylan actually deferred to praising a designer named Yoichi Yamada as one of Nintendo's best for the amazing level design direction he added to Starfox.
Dylan seemed to have a great interest in forwarding the capabilities of the 3D platform. The kinds of directions his thinking brought him to reflected a lot of the free roam genres that were already available in arcade games at the time. Miyamoto seemed very headstrong in creating an experience wrapped around a larger matrix of puzzles and especially narrative.
In an interview, he was said to have been a big proponent of Rails and story. In fact, the reason Dylan's initial revolutionary creation of X was only released in Japan was because it wasn't built around a compelling puzzle to be solved. Nintendo at the time took an analogous stance to Apple in their disinterest in boasting speeds and feeds over composition and character. This would create tension with any engineer, but the final product proved to be more successful than any free-roam 3D simulator on the market. I'm of the belief that these particular UX values carried Nintendo forward with regards to consumer satisfaction and memorability.
The generation that Starfox belonged to was one of the rarest seasons that Nintendo would have the most powerful console on the market.
If you can remember the beginnings of the Intel Extreme integrated graphics back in 2006, from a high level it shares the same essence, where the GPU and CPU work together on shared resources. The SNES CPU is equipped with two buses, one for general logic and the other for assisting the GPU and sound processing hardware. What made this pairing innovative were transfer speeds. Typically, each bus can be used one at a time. Think of a walkie-talkie, where you can either talk or you can listen. You can either send data or you can receive data, but never both simultaneously. It was the same deal with 3G cellular data from a few years ago, technically known as HESPA. Transfers were slower because you could either send or receive data packets, but never both at the same time. 4G, otherwise known as HESPA Plus, allowed flow in both directions and made your web pages load a lot faster because alternating streams became simultaneously flowing ones. Similarly, the SNES did this as well, allowing these buses to read and write. However, for a polygonally heavy game like Starfox that needed to maintain a playable frame rate, this was not enough. Assistive hardware was required to achieve the true rendered image that they desired, and Nintendo planned for this surprisingly. The top-loading slot of your SNES operated as an I/O used for reading software, as well as a hardware expansion. Liken it to PCIe, which, as of recent, can be home to some of the fastest SSD storage around, alongside powerful GPUs. Think of the cartridge as a host for both, storage for the game ROM, and a small logic board extension for an additional GPU. This additional assistive GPU arrived in every Starfox cartridge, and it was called the Super FX. It made 3D flight simulation on the SNES a reality. This isn't the last time Nintendo thought to build a computer with expandable hardware. The Nintendo 64 would look to the expansion pack for RAM. It turns out this company did care about sufficient hardware, just in a way that puts experience first.
Star Fox saw one of the last stages of commercial polygonal treatments in video games before the true 3D generation kicked in with the Nintendo 64.
Prior to that, however, we saw a rather unattractive climb through wireframe shapes and aliased, paper-like, cel-shaded environments struggling to run at a playable frame rate. Star Fox's aesthetic was unique, however. It's a style that's celebrated today in indie games to a great extent. It's the flagship milestone of low-poly art. Similar to pixel art, this is another aesthetic movement defined by its hardware limitations, but celebrated for its visual language. The low-poly era was another compelling means of conveyance that now makes the public favor for photorealism in games seem primitive and tertiary. If you'd like to explore that topic more, check out Chris Franklin's super old yet brilliant exposition on the reach for photorealism in games.
I have a question for everyone watching, and please answer carefully, because I'm going to try something new. I'm going to read all of the answers left in the comments, and I'm going to present and respond to some of my favorite ones at the end of the next video.
Does Nintendo still have a respectable handle on creating new experiences in video games? And does it matter? Explain yourself.
Until next time, guys, thank you so much for watching. My name is Satchbag Drakes. Copacetic.